Yes, good evening and welcome to the Friday night preview show live with me, Sam Fielding. We will introduce our guest very shortly, but first of all, I wanted to read something out regarding Warren Green, who a Blackpool academy manager who sadly passed away today. Again, I'd like to show my respect to Warren Green, aged 46, Blackpool's academy manager, who sadly passed away after a long battle with cancer. An extremely dedicated professional, Warren's association with the Seaside has spanned many years, having played in the academy and coached in the community at the Centre of Excellence. After broadening his coaching experiences elsewhere in the UK and out in Sweden, Warren returned to Blackpool in a position of the academy manager in 2017, overseeing the development and welfare of the club's promising youngsters. Our thoughts from the Seaside podcast and the Blackpool family are with Warren's family and friends this evening. That was obviously a tribute there to Warren Green. We are going to crack on with the shows. We've got two fantastic guests this evening. I'll start off by bringing Tom back into the fray. Tom, welcome back to the Seaside podcast.
Good evening, Sam.
How are you doing? Obviously, we've not been here for a few weeks, so a bit of respite, get the engine going again. It's good to be back, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while. It was nice to see us on telly in the FA Cup, and it's really good to be back in league football. So, good evening.
Good evening. And we also have Neil, who is from, he's a Peterborough fan. Neil, welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me on, both of you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a good show and a good game tomorrow. As looking back at the history, there's plenty of goals between the two sides. But Neil, I'll start with you. And what we do at the start of every show is get the guests to tell us a little about how they got support in Peterborough, their team, should I say. So how did you get support in Peterborough, and are there any memories that stand out for you?
Yeah, so I guess I can blame my dad for it. I guess he took me along to Posh when I was probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years old, something like that. So started supporting Posh in around 1991 season. I'm probably the only Posh fan who can lay claim to being a glory supporter, because I started supporting Posh and we won promotion in back-to-back seasons when I first started. So it's been relatively downhill since then, really, because in that second season as well, we managed to beat Liverpool in the League Cup as well, which although I'd probably only be about 8 or 9 years old at the time, is probably still a pretty decent highlight or memory from my time supporting Posh. We've won, in my time supporting Posh, we are 4 out of 4 at Wembley, I think. We've won the league, what are we going to call it? Johnson's Paint, Papa John's trophy now, or a windscreen, whatever it is. We won that once, and then we've won the playoffs. We beat Stockport in the playoffs. Actually 3, because one of them was at Old Trafford, actually. But yeah, so we've been pretty good in the playoffs as well. So a couple of top flight wins over clubs in League Cups, a Football League trophy win, and 3 playoff wins. So they're probably all the highlights that you could sort of wrap up, I guess.
Yes, I know a team who've got a few more playoff wins. Tom, do you reckon you can name the team, or?
No, doesn't come to mind.
No, if you're in the chat, see who's got more playoff wins than Peterborough, what Neil was telling us there. Obviously, we're watching football at home. Neil, how have you found watching your team sat in the comfort of your own home?
Yeah, it hasn't been, obviously it's not what we want to be doing. We're obviously trying to get to grips with iFollow and stuff like that. It's been different. As I say, like, my dad took me along to football, and I've basically gone to football with my dad ever since. So it's been a bit of a strange experience not being able to share that with it. And I think in these sort of times, you perhaps start to realize what elements of football you do miss and stuff like that. And at times it's as much you miss what happens on the pitch at 3 o'clock as you do what goes before it and what goes after it. And it's perhaps those little things that you potentially take for granted that when it's taken away, because ultimately we can still watch the game. I know it's not ideal. I know it's not great. I know we're putting up with intermittent streams every now and again, but ultimately you can still sort of follow the action, whatnot. But what you do miss is that interaction with friends and family, that sort of football family that you're not seeing anymore. And so it's great that we can still follow it. It'll just be better still when we can all get back to the games, and I'm sure that there's nothing that's going to wow people there. But I think that's the sentiment, that you just sort of miss those sort of routines and habits, really.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the government have announced the potential being back in December, which I can't quite see, but hopefully not too far in the new year, because I know so many teams, including Blackpool, did obviously the trial games, 1,000 people in there, and it went really well. And fingers crossed that fans will be back in the ground soon to also support the team, but also the club, because they're putting a lot of money at the moment to keep it going. Tom, I want to move just towards Blackpool a little bit here. The last game was against Leeds United. They're on the 21s in the Papa John's Trophy. A 3-0 victory back on Wednesday, the 11th of November. A stunning goal from Dan Kemp in the 9th minute, followed by an own goal. And then Ethan Robson finished off the fine evening with a curling effort past the goalkeeper, making it 4 wins in 4 competitions. That's just comes to show how far we've come in a little bit of space of time, because a few weeks back we were being quite negative of losing quite a few games.
Yes, hitting on the head, really. It's just about that winning momentum, wasn't it? So I think it's vital that we got the win despite the opposition. And it's good to continue that winning form and see some players that haven't been playing, should I say. Good to see Bez with an assist and Kemp get a start and get a goal, because he's got amazing potential for the first team. And like you say, just carrying that winning momentum and sees us through to the next game. So.
Yeah, I guess Neil Critchley's come from Liverpool, where the mentality is just win every game, whether it's a League Cup competition, Champions League, you name it. So do you think Neil Critchley's brought that into Blackpool, where normally we might have played a few more youngsters in that game against Leeds?
Yeah, for sure. I think when we talked about the FA Cup, he was passionate about winning that match again, despite the opposition. And Eastbourne were a credit to the football and league sides as well. So big shout out to those, and it was good to see what Blackpool did as well, just to touch upon that again. But yeah, like you said, that winning mentality can't be beat, and the more you win, the more belief you have in going into each game. And it's just nice to see us scoring goals as well, and seeing sort of Gary Medine and stuff, especially with Jerry Yates sort of starting to combine a lot more. And it's just good to see for the Blackpool fans. I think we needed that after the start, because coming on each Friday was a bit of hit and miss depending on what the fans were feeling. So I think Calderwood's added a lot of bite to the dressing room and a bit of organisation. And as I said a few weeks back, I think it's really important for Critchley to get that side of management as well, to see someone much more experienced come in, because we all know where it was going and what he's added. So credit to them both. They've turned things around, and fingers crossed we can get another positive result tomorrow.
Fingers crossed. I know we'll talk on Peterborough soon, but we knew that going into this end of November, December period, that Blackpool had so many tough fixtures coming with the likes of, I said, this weekend's opponents. Just like I said, I know it's cut, but how important was it just for the squad, do you think? I know you can't say for yourself, but for the squad, knowing that they come back off 4 back-to-back wins to go into this period with full confidence, because again, this league you can beat anyone, but just having that right frame of mind of knowing you can score goals and go and get 3 points or progress to the next round of competition, just in that dressing room, it must be key, isn't it?
It is vital. It's literally vital to any team, isn't it? So whether you get off to a bad start and you turn it around, or whether you have a good start and you start to lose games, it works both ways. The position we were in was free falling, and you would have dreaded playing Eastbourne, you would have dreaded playing Leeds under 21. So like I said, it's just nice to be sort of more reassured and I mentioned that word many times, a direction on the pitch. Without that, us as fans felt a bit lost. So the players will be in full spirits, and I think that a belief was always there in terms of Critchley, but it didn't sort of translate onto the pitch. So that's starting to come through now. And you saw at Eastbourne again, despite the opposition, that from the first 30 seconds we nearly scored, and we kept the ball really well, and we were having a lot more shots in anger on goal. So it's really good to see his plan start to come through. It just needs to be consistent, and Christmas is, as you said, a vital period. We've got games Saturday, Tuesday almost every week, and the hardest opposition we've played all season. So without that winning streak behind us, I would have been dreading this, as we said a few weeks back. So it's going to be interesting to see. And tomorrow's game is the most intriguing of all season, especially after the run we've just come off, and Peterborough having a little bit of a setback. I don't think it will matter too much. I think Crew's a good side, but I think it'll be an interesting game to see how both teams respond to the break and then coming back off Peterborough's loss. So
Yeah, interesting. We'll see how the game gets on tomorrow. Before we move on to your team, Neil, a question here from Gareth, who's a Blackpool fan. He said, one for Neil. How do Peterborough keep on finding cracking strikers from non-league or lower league for very little money and selling on for a huge fee? There's obviously a few players who come to that bracket. Your scout should get a massive bonus. I don't know if you can find, but you look back at the history of Mikhail Smith, Ivan Toney, which we might come on to a little bit later. There's so many players, aren't there, up there that you can name, really?
Yeah, Aaron McLean was another one, and then more recently, I suppose, you had Jack Marriott,
Marcus
Connor Washington would have been one, Asombalonga would have been another one, Lee Tomlin, I guess, to an extent, he would have been another, and then you have the players just, I guess, a bit like Tomlin, you would have had George Boyd and Dembele now, I suppose, as well, is another. I guess, like, in terms of like when you're looking at clubs' identities, and like we've mentioned Crewe, and when you talk about Crewe, you talk about youth team, you talk about academy, you talk about that, it's sort of in their DNA. And certainly since Darren McAntony come to the club, like our sort of, I guess it was young and hungry type motto, type signing of player that we wanted to go after, has sort of now become our DNA, I guess. And we do really well in terms of those types of signings that we do pick up. We do throw a lot of arrows at stuff, so there probably is quite a few players that don't hit the mark, but if you're picking them up for relatively small fees, you can afford to miss on the odd one. I guess the ones where you have to make sure you hit the mark and where the scouts really earn their corn, I guess, is your signings like a Sombalonga, who cost us over $1 million. I know he went for a lot of money, 8 million or something, but he did cost us $1 million. And for a League One club, it's not pittance.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
Same with Johnson Clark Harris. I mean, I'm not saying he's a particular, like, wow, where did you pluck him from? Because he was pretty much on everyone's radar, but that's another over £1 million. So you need to make sure you do sort of hit the mark with some of these. And just to sort of highlight that, we've obviously got Mo Issa, who cost over £1 million at the start of last season, and he had a really good season last year, but he's gone pretty cold, and that just sort of shows that when things go well, we get the plaudits, and we should do, because it's vital to the sustainability of our club, of any club really, to be able to buy low, sell high. But if you do get one wrong, or one that doesn't quite work, you've got a bit of a expensive problem on your hands potentially. But hey, overall, I'm definitely not complaining, and we're definitely sort of net profit on all of this sort of stuff. So it's definitely good on that side of things.
Gareth, I hope that answers your question there. Again, fans, or supporters for both teams, if you want to get your comments in or any questions for us, do leave them in the comment section below. We'll try and read out as many as possible. Moving to your side again, obviously top of the Sky Bet League One table after 12 games being played, 8 wins, one draw, and only losing 3 games in the process. Not a bad start to the campaign, Neil.
No, it has been. I don't think you will find any Posh fan complaining at all about the start to the season. I think I know the league table is still sort of embryonic at this stage, but I think it'd be greedy of us to be expecting anything more. The one thing I would say, and the one thing that would give your side plenty of hope for tomorrow, is yes, we're top of the table, and yes, on the stats and things like that, there's no complaints. I wouldn't say we're exactly setting the world on fire in terms of performances. At least there is. Darren Ferguson, the manager, talks about, there's plenty more to come, and sometimes that is, a throwaway comment after a win, to keep players grounded. But I think that's definitely the case. There hasn't been that many games this season where you've sort of, I was going to say left the ground, but when you've turned off the laptop and you think, wow, we were brilliant today. That hasn't been the case. Even against Shrewsbury, we beat Shrewsbury 5-1, but it was 1-1 heading close to, or we were 2-1 up heading close to half time, and they had a man sent off. Changed the whole complexion of the game. But before we even went 1-0 up, Shrewsbury could have been 1-2-0 up in that game. So, yeah, I think the league table is fine. The win record is fine. Performance-wise, it hasn't been perhaps all sweetness and light, or it hasn't been quite as good as what perhaps to the outside of the league table might suggest. Obviously, you can look at it the other way and think, well, if you're still not playing great and you're top, then that's a brilliant position to be in, because you've picked up the points. But yeah, I just think that ultimately, are we the best team in the league at the minute? I wouldn't have thought so. You know, I don't think performances necessarily match up with that in my view just yet.
Well, you talk about that. I'm not top of the league and games, but obviously a 2-0 defeat to Crewe in the last fixture. Do you just think that was a bad day at the office, or do you really think that Peterborough haven't really hit the ground running in terms of being consistent in League One?
Yeah, a bit of both. On Saturday, I was really impressed with Crewe. I thought Crewe were really good. And I think you guys have been there and what? Did you draw Crewe?
Drew, yeah.
Yeah. Crewe were really good. You have like the scoreline that you see is a totally like fair reflection of how the game went, and it was just one of those games as a Posh fan, and maybe we can all identify with it, that when it kicks off after about 5 minutes, they were in our face, they were pressing us, and after about 5 minutes, you just get that feeling when you're just like, we're not going to win this. I don't know what it is, but as a football fan, you just get that vibe. We've watched enough games, and it was just they were well. And yet, in saying that, both their goals, one was a set piece, and one was us trying to play it out from the back, and they stole it and went through and scored. So both goals were avoidable, but like no complaints about the result at all. And I'm not saying it's been coming. I don't mean it like that. It wasn't a massive surprise that we were capable of throwing in one of those performances. What I would say is Jack Taylor, who's our centre midfielder, was away on international duty. So he's been called up to the full Republic of Ireland squad. He's back tomorrow. And then Nathan Thompson, who would either play right back or on the right-hand side of 3 centre-backs, he pulled his hamstring in the cup tie at Oxford, so he was missing. So we were missing 2 sort of first teamers, one of which Thompson will be out tomorrow as well. It was just generally disappointing, really, on Saturday, but no complaints.
Tom, just going off the back of what Neil said there in terms of teams getting in their face and them not having the best start, does that encourage you, being a Blackpool fan, that knowing in the games we have done, we can get in teams' faces and cause nerves, especially if they're coming to that game on the back of a defeat at Crewe?
Yeah, I think if we follow the same sort of mantra we did for both Swindon and Lincoln at home, and Plymouth certainly sort of in the earlier stage and in the pre-season friendlies, we asked for this all the time, didn't we? We said we want that pressing game, we want to get in their faces. So I think it's key if they've done their homework that we start like that. And we've got nothing to lose. We're in good form and they're top of the league. So why wouldn't we want to take the game to them? So I hope Critchley and Calderwood have that point of view as well. So it gives us some encouragement that they're vulnerable as such. We know how vulnerable we can be. So like I said, this is why I think it's really intriguing tomorrow. And hopefully it hasn't got 0-0 plastered all over it, because I think there will be some goals. But yeah, we need to start as confidently as we possibly can do, because on a day we can beat anyone with the team we've got. So why wouldn't we?
Yeah, another comment that's coming in now. It just says the league is wide open. A cliche, I know, but pretty much every team is capable of beating anyone. No real home advantage at the moment. Is that something you'd agree with, Neil? I know previous games you've come back from 1-0 down to win 2-1 in added on time against Fleetwood. What do you feel about that home advantage anymore? Do you think it's completely non-existent, or do you think there is some still, if there is some home advantage, shall we say?
We as in terms of Posh, would definitely subscribe to the home advantage theory. We're currently on a incredible run at home, and I'm trying to think of the stat, I can't remember, but it's something like we're unbeaten in 12 or 15 or something like that at home, so we're incredibly strong at home. But so I'd like to think there is something in that home advantage, because it's definitely, we want to at least emit this sort of fortress sort of feeling around Posh. But going back to something that Tom said there in terms of starting quick and getting in Posh's faces, that is definitely the way to ruffle some feathers tomorrow for Blackpool. I mean, we beat Swindon 3-1 at home earlier in the season, but Swindon were 1-0 up and should have been out of sight at half time. We were so lethargic early doors. Then we beat Oxford 2-0, but Oxford were fantastic in the first half. We were incredibly lethargic again there. The Shrewsbury game we already touched upon. Okay, we ran out 5-1 winners, but Shrewsbury could have been 1-0, 2-0 up at half time, something like that. 2-1. Well, they should have at least been in the game properly at half time. And so the first half, just sort of slowness, sluggishness, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how to quantify it, but it's definitely been a sort of theme of Posh's home performances this season. I don't know why, but it's something that the manager has alluded to in press conferences and things like that. So if you guys are talking about, that is an asset, or that is something in your game that you can roll out there, and that is sort of a characteristic of how you guys can play, I think that makes for a key sort of battleground for tomorrow's game. Because if you do come out and get in Posh's faces early doors, then you would hope Posh would have a reaction after the Crewe game. But that sort of in your face sort of approach to Posh has caused us problems so far this season. And so it wouldn't surprise me if you guys have success doing that tomorrow as well.
It's it's interesting you said that you follow a theme, because I think most ball fans would agree in the chat as well. If you want to get your views, and you can, but following a theme, we would always either sort of concede first or let teams attack us early doors, and we got into a habit of conceding really sloppy goals. So it's interesting to see that each team are finding some form of theme, whether you start better in the second half or start in the first half. So judging, you said you're not the best team in the league, and I know you lost 2-0 to Crewe. Would you say Crewe are one of the better sides you've seen this season? I don't know where you think they'll finish, but I was impressed by Crewe in their early form as well. But who do you think's the best team you've seen this season?
Yeah, so Crewe would be up there. I'm a little bit worried about Crewe because I thought they were really good between the boxes. I worry about them from a goal scoring perspective in terms of can they create enough chances, or rather convert enough chances? Because I know that they should have beaten Ipswich the week before that. Against Gillingham, they absolutely destroyed them but got beat. And so you have to worry a little bit about it. But they did get promoted last year, right? They were playing at a lower level. Maybe it just takes them a bit of time to sort of find their feet. So I'm a big fan of Crewe. There's no problem there at all. I thought Swindon were really good, but obviously there's now Richie Wellens has gone, and you don't really sure what to make of that. And I guess one of the better sides I've seen this season is just Oxford, and just waiting for them to catch fire, because I watched one of your guys' podcasts when you were talking about, your pre-season predictions and stuff. And Oxford, and I would have been the same. Oxford, you would think would be top 6 sort of as standard, really. Whether they're just suffering from a bit of a hangover from the playoffs, because obviously they got beat in the playoffs, and then you don't normally have you didn't normally have your 2-3 months to sort of get over it, regroup and come back. You're pretty much straight back into it. Maybe we're seeing the same with Fleetwood and things like that, and they may improve as the season goes on. But we got beat 1-0 away at Sunderland at the start of the season with a penalty. That is probably one of the games where Posh actually started really well. We came out the traps. We should have been 1 or 2-0 up away at Sunderland, and we weren't. Sunderland gradually came back into it. They got a penalty. We hit the bar late on. A draw, I think, without wanting, probably slightly rose-tinted, but I'd have thought a draw would have been a fair result. But Sunderland just looked what you'd probably expect from a Parkinson side. They were really solid. They've got lots of quality just because, that's the sort of team they are. I'd suggest they are absolutely nailed on for top 6 at least. I think they're just really good. I'm just waiting for Oxford to sort of catch fire, but the longer it goes on, I guess the more worried you sort of get. I don't know how you see it from your side in terms of who you've faced.
I've not really thought a team's played us off the park personally.
We haven't. I mean, the only thing we really got destroyed against was Ipswich, wasn't it? And we just started again. It was 2 or 3 just horrendous goals. We just kept conceding at the start of the season. So it's difficult to say anyone's Critchley's touched upon it as well. We haven't been outplayed and out sort of planned by many people. I think the 2 games which really point out are Ipswich and Gillingham, because Gillingham, I think Steve Evans just absolutely done Critchley over, because they scored 2, one really poor goal and one we backed off their striker and he just banged it in bottom corner. But they just played us, cheap fouls on the pitch, falling over, sort of time wasting, and they just schooled him a little bit. So I think Critchley learned a lesson that day as well. But no one's been really incredible. Ipswich are the team that stand out the most, because they were very organised and they were like pit bulls really. As soon as they saw an opportunity, they scored. Whereas we needed at the start of the season 2 or 3 opportunities to score 1 goal. So Ipswich for me stood out the most.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because they started the
sorry.
season really well last season as well. Sorry, they started the season really well last year as well, didn't they? And then slowly sort of faded. So it'd be interesting to see. They've sort of done the same again this year to an extent, haven't they? So, yeah, we haven't played them yet. I'm not sure when they're on our calendar, but yeah, it would just be interesting to see if they can sustain it or not this year.
Yeah, I was going to literally took the words out of my mouth there. I was saying Ipswich had a really good start. You looked really strong and organised, and then as soon as you hit November, December, they kind of fell apart. And same with Oxford, they had quite a bad start to the season last year. And again, I just think, again, similar to what Blackpool fans have gone through in, well, last month or two, just a slow start, but you need that one victory and it breeds confidence inside the squad. So I'm sure they'll be up there at the end. And we've had some comments in. I'll get those in before. Two on the screen before. Gareth said Ipswich battered us. Amax said Ipswich were good. Ray Gregson, his comments just come in, said we should never have played the Tractor Boys when we did. Obviously, the game got brought forwards, which meant Blackpool had a break last weekend in the calendar, which isn't a bad thing due to injuries and players been away, so that was good. And then Christian's just put in here, get up on the screen, he says horrific defending versus Ipswich. So again, a mixture of teams being really good and just bad defending from Blackpool. But Neil, come back to you. I've heard you talk there, and some things you say make me quite happy going into tomorrow's game. But how are you feeling going into the game against Blackpool tomorrow?
I think it'll be tight. I don't think it's one of those games where, as the neutral, you should necessarily be tricked by the league positions of the two teams. You know, if you take that at face value, then with all due respect, you would think Posh would beat Blackpool, just based on that. But you guys have obviously, picked up, some form of late. You've spoken about that, how important it is, regardless of competition. You just need to get into that habit. You just need to start doing good things and consistently do them, and you reap the benefits of that, regardless of what game you're doing them in. And I just think that Posh just aren't quite clicking yet. I think one of Posh's clear advantages against most League One sides is man for man. Posh have a very strong squad, but we're just not quite clicking just yet. It's just not quite working, and so it'll be tough tomorrow. I was thinking more in the sort of, I'm not sure if we're doing predictions or anything, but if we do win, I think it would be tight, and it wouldn't surprise me massively if there's a bit of a stalemate, to be honest. So it's not that I'm always a glass half empty kind of guy. Maybe it's just because our performances haven't been wonderful of late, and then we, a bit of recency bias because of the Crew result is so is so close in the rearview mirror. But I just think there's just a few things to work on with Posh, and Thompson missing is a big miss for us. And we just need to get back to stringing together a good performance or two. And we may well be playing you guys at the wrong time. I know sort of you guys, there was a bit of money around for you guys sort of anti-post at the start of the season. And so, there's a bit of a turnover of players at your club. I don't know if that's fair to say. And so perhaps it's no surprise as a neutral looking on that it's just taking you guys a little bit of time to, I don't know, to work out where the pieces fall a little bit, and then you settle on stuff, and then things start, because you can't doubt in theory the CV of the man in charge, and so maybe it just takes a bit of time for those ideas to come across, to bed in new players, and I think it'll be a good game tomorrow. I just think it might be tight. It's definitely not a home banker, put it that way.
So, again, Tom, coming into that, I was sort of commenting saying Charlton were a decent side as well. Obviously, came to the Foul Coast and beat Blackpool there. Again, what are your thoughts to what Neil had to say there, Tom?
In some respects, agree. I think if judging by his sort of point of view of them not playing very well, if it does click tomorrow, it could be 3 or 4-0, couldn't it? So they've certainly got the squad there to do damage to a lot of teams, as Shrewsbury found out. Even though they didn't play well, they still managed to score 5 goals. So they've got some individuals which can do damage. I take spirit in the fact that if Ballard's going to start tomorrow after being on international duty, that he is head and shoulders probably above most defenders in League One in terms of centre backs. And if he can replicate the form that he has done for Northern Ireland in the early stages for us, we could be much more reassured at the back. So there's a bit of nervousness around tomorrow's game. We know we can do well, but we know we can concede really poor goals. So if they smell blood, can they score 3 or 4? They've already proven they can. If we can hold them out for longer and longer and we nick a goal, then we could come away with all 3 points. But we'll go to the predictions a bit later on. I'm sure the fans in the chat will as well. So I've got my point of view on tomorrow. So it's a little optimistic, but we'll see. What are your thoughts, Sam?
I think it's going to be, again, we'll come predictions, but a tight game. But it's one of those games that one side, if they get the early goal, I think they can go on and get a few more and really go for the juggler in the old cliche there and go and get the win. And as Amax commenting here, I was going to say something very similar. He said, if Blackpool have any aspirations for promotion this season, then tomorrow will be a marker. And again, I think if you're going to finish above Peterborough, you're going to win the league, in my opinion. I think after last year, and I said a bit of heartbreak because I thought they were on a bit of a roll and didn't sneak in the playoffs due to the points per game ratio that was brought in place. So I can understand the hurt and the frustration, but I think they'll put it behind them this year and be promoted because they've got the players, they've got the squad, the strength and depth to really put on a show in matches. And again, like I said, if you've not ticked Neil, I'm sure it'll come soon. And I'm just hoping it's not tomorrow afternoon. We talked there about obviously both all of our thoughts ahead of the game. Looking at obviously the squad and your player stats, Johnson Clark-Harris came in the summer, Siriki Dembele. You'd kind of say they're the two main threats going forward. As a Peterborough fan, just give us an insight into where they play and what they offer Peterborough going forward on a match day.
Yeah, so Johnson Clark-Harris was obviously signed to, I'll use the word replace Ivan Toney pretty loosely because trying to replace the irreplaceable is a pretty thankless task. But I think we've probably gone out and got the best version of Toney for where we would be shopping and the budget. And so Clark-Harris, I mean, a lot of listeners or viewers may be, aware of him, obviously, from Bristol Rovers. And he's brought exactly what we'd expect to that. He's big, he's awkward, he's strong, he holds the ball up incredibly well, he wins a lot in the air. So he's exactly the type of player we need in terms of if we want to go direct, we can play straight up to him. And then you've got Dembele and Sami Smodic who can run off of him. So he's really focal to how we want to play. Is he as mobile as Toney? No, which means he doesn't necessarily, attacks the first line of defence. He's not quite as mobile as Toney, which means the ball can sort of pass our forward players into our midfield a lot quicker than what it did last year. So defensively, that is perhaps a weakness at the very top of the pitch. In terms of attacking, and when I say that we haven't quite clicked, last season you had Ivan Toney with Dembele and Smodic like running off of him or playing around him. We're now doing exactly the same, but with Johnson Clark-Harris, and things just haven't quite, the wavelength isn't quite there yet. And that's what I mean by us not quite clicking. So like the ball could be played up to Clark-Harris, he'll win the flick on and Dembele's run off the wrong side of him. So he might have gone right, the flick on's gone left. They're only little things, but last season when we were flying towards the death, they're the things that Dembele takes in his path, goes through on goal, scores or whatever. So we're just not quite, everyone's not quite on the same wavelength just yet. Sami Smodic we had on loan from Bristol City last year in January. His move has been made permanent. So again, we talk about transfer fees. He was $1 million. He cost £1 million. So of those 3 players up top, or the 3 forward players, Johnson Clark-Harris cost $1 million, Sami Smodic cost $1 million, and Dembele was signed from Grimsby for whatever. But so you've got a couple of £1 million worth of talent up top. Smodic looks a player who is on his day is a game winner. He's a game changer. He's fantastic. He's I wouldn't say he's very low on confidence, but he's missed a load of chances. He could have got a hat-trick we won 2-0 away at Bristol Rovers. The keeper made 2 or 3 excellent saves. I think he hit the post as well. And then at home to Shrewsbury, we won 5-1. He had a goal disallowed for being offside, which was really lazy when he's looking along the line. And he had 2 or 3 chances that he should have scored that he missed, blazing over the bar. So he seems like that classic thing of he just needs a goal. And I say things like they're not quite clicking. The 3 of them, when they've played, they've got 12 in 12 between them. goals to games.
Not a bad ratio, is it?
No, so it probably makes me sound like I'm being really greedy and whatnot. But when you see it, and I'm sure you'll see it tomorrow, it's just not quite. I don't know. We all watch enough football, and you can just see if players just aren't quite on the wavelength. Like you play a little 1-2, and Clark Harris will give it back, and Dembele hasn't gone; he's held his position, and so you give the ball away, and that's not like bad play as such. It's just not being on the same wavelength. But Posh have had 14 different scorers this season so far across all games. So when you talk about Tony being like such a key player last year, and he got like 26 goals in 30 odd games, and he obviously was. And so right away, the question is, how are you going to replace that? Well, it's only our two centre halves who haven't scored yet this season. Every other outfield player who's played has scored at some point. So it's pretty decent in that regard. It's just those little interchanges of play when we get in the final third that we're just not quite on the same wavelength. And it's just one of those things whereby, when that starts to happen, I can see us really causing teams an awful lot of problems. But it's impossible to predict when that will happen. It could be tomorrow. And like as a Posh fan, I hope it is, tomorrow. But it might take two games, 3 games, 4 games, half a dozen games. You don't know. You have to work on these things. And so, but I mean, they've got 12 in 12, so it's not like it's, we don't need anyone to feel sorry for us. But and there's plenty of potential, and the players are good enough. It's just when they do, it's something to be really excited about.
No, but we'll see. Again, there's been goals in all the games, or most of the games between the two sides, so I'm sure that's not going to stop tomorrow. Gareth's got a comment in here saying Kai, Medine, Yates and CJ should give defenders nightmares. Robson and Ballard are back. Obviously, we don't know the team yet. Virtue is training again. The future is Tangerine. And Tom, you have to agree there with what Gareth says, that when you've got pace and you've got goal scorers now who are starting to find the feet and the form in this new formation that we've started playing, it must give you confidence to what Neil said, and obviously looking back at results of what Peterborough have got.
Yeah, for sure. I think the talent we've got in our team is always been undeniable. It's just the way they've been sort of coached on the pitch is the frustration, I think, is come out even more so. I think with the team we've got and the money we've spent, I think you expect a lot more, which is arguably that's fine from a fan base point of view, but we're also X amount of games into a season which they have hardly played before. So I think Peterborough's problem of not quite clicking and scoring many goals is a big difference to why they're top. I'm not putting all banter aside. If they're not clicking and they're top and they're winning games 5-1, it just shows you the talent they've got, in all seriousness. And there's no doubt in my mind that we could be up there in terms of playoffs, etc. But we need to find some consistency. And like I said, the opposition has been there for Paul in terms of the cup games and the under 21. So we need to translate that into the league and get us up there. So no doubt in my mind that tomorrow's game could be a big goal fest. I can't fathom in my head how it would be a stalemate and how we've cancelled each other out, because I think there will be goals. It gives me some confidence if we can score 1 or 2 and we have a defensive masterclass at the back that we'll draw blood tomorrow on the Football League, or also say on League One, and we'll make sort of Blackpool on the map a little bit, lose 4-5-0, and it goes back to the drawing board a little bit. So, like I said earlier, it's the most intriguing game of the season for me, and I can't actually wait. And it's the first time I've said that this season, apart from the start of the season. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I wonder what's in your drink, Tom. Anyway, I've been optimistic for once. No. Neil, get back to you again. Obviously, Darren Ferguson, the manager, we briefly spoke about him before, in his third spell at London Road or Abex Stadium, whichever you want to call it these days, due to commercial. Obviously, some fans say don't go back to the club where you've had a bit of success, but with Ferguson's that kind of not been the case. But he seems to have an impact every time he comes in, and recently you've been so close to getting promotion. It's just a matter of time, do you think, on the Ferguson that you're back in the Championship?
That's the hope. Yes, but I mean, he's in his third spell. He won back-to-back promotions in his first spell, and then left when we made it to the Championship. We got relegated that year. He came back and led us back to promotion, and then He kept us in the Championship. Then we got relegated. We got beat in the playoffs, and then he left again. So he's back again. He definitely seems a different character this time. He's a lot more thoughtful. He's a lot more methodical. He just seems a lot more almost relaxed in a way. You know, he seems very considered in his interviews. He just seems very different to how he has been at the club. And obviously, like, people change over time. It seems like in his way, in his time away from the club, he's developed. He's almost matured in a way as a manager, I think. And now the key to him, I think, in a way, this is sort of his biggest challenge, because when we won back-to-back promotions from League Two and League One, we were scoring goals like for fun. And everyone goes, oh, bloody hell, like, we were brilliant in that season. And then when you look back, it's like, yeah, well, we had Mikhail Smith, Aaron McLean, Ryan Bennett, George Boyd. Like, 2 or 3 of these players went on to play in the Premier League, and you're playing Accrington in League Two and winning 8-0. And it's like, at the time, you're loving it. When you look back, it's like, well, we should have been beating those teams by those sort of scores because of the talent that we had. I think this season now, or this project, whatever you want to call it, is probably his biggest test in a way, because as Tom's mentioned, and as I said earlier, I think man for man, if you went 11-11 with pretty much any other team in League One, I don't think I'm necessarily being big-headed to think Posh have probably got one of the best 11s for 11s in the league. And so now, considering how we finished last season when we were flying, Sam, you touched on it. We'd won 7 of our last 9 games before lockdown happened, and we'd beaten like Wycombe, Rotherham, Ipswich, Oxford, Portsmouth. We beat all of them in that run of games, winning 4-0, 4-1, all of this sorts of scores. We were flying. We've lost Tony, but replaced him with Clark Harris. I think now Ferguson this season, really, there's no excuses with this team this season. And so, and that's why I think it's his biggest test. I'm not saying he can't do it, not at all. I just think that this is a real test for him, because you could argue to an extent the first 11 that we put out would probably give it a good go in the Championship this year. I'm not saying we'd do anything, but it'd be a case of staying up, but there's a case for saying that team would have a chance of staying up potentially in the Championship. And so I don't think there's many excuses, if any, for him this year. And that's why I just think it's almost refreshing in a way that he seems quite relaxed and quite chilled and quite thoughtful about it. But I think perhaps deep down he knows that this is a no excuse season for us, really.
I was going to come obviously back to what we were talking about before. Obviously, I mentioned before working at Fleetwood, and I think Fleetwood and Peterborough were one of those teams that were on really good runs. Fleetwood unbeaten in 12, and you said kind of your home form, and that was really going to push you forward in the league campaign if it continued after the lockdown, or before it got points per game system. So in some respects, do you think there's more hunger from the chairman? We know he's been quite vocal of the way the EFL dealt with certain things last year, and it looked like the restart was going to happen, and then it didn't. Do you think there is more hunger in the side, and something that the manager's probably trying to get across his players? But on the flip side of that comes a lot of pressure, doesn't it, in terms of, look, we were nearly there last season. We missed out due to some ruling that, again, no one could have said was going to happen. But do you think there's pressure to that, but also a lot of hunger inside the dressing room?
It's definitely a vibe that is sort of from top down from the club, as you say. I mean, Darren McCanty, our chairman, isn't backwards and coming forwards, is he, if he's got an opinion? And so he's been very vocal in what's gone on. Ferguson, to be fair, has kept pretty quiet on it. He's mentioned it every now and again in press conferences, but has generally sort of avoided it, really. There is that sense of injustice around the club. I'm not sure if it's necessarily prominent within the players as such. I'm sure they talk about it and stuff, but they're not vocal in it. And I think that's potentially, I think there's 2 things there. One is there was 9 players leave in the summer, but only 5 came in. Of the 5 that came in, one was Smodic, who we had on loan anyway. One was Reece Brown on loan, who we had on loan anyway. One was a 17-year-old who came from Barnet, who isn't necessarily going to play week in, week out in the first team. Yeah. And the other one was Clark Harris replacing Tony, who you had to do something. So the nucleus of the side is very much what it was last year, which I think helps, because if the general vibe is around the club of we were hard done by, sure, that adds pressure. But if the nucleus of the team is the same, it's that sort of all for one and one for all type mentality. And secondly, maybe actually in a way because of that, and because of the way our chairman tends to conduct himself, playing behind closed doors might actually be a bonus for us in a way, because there's a lot of expectation around us at the minute. A lot of Posh fans, at the start of the season, when it's like, where are you going to finish? There was lots of ones and twos, basically, in terms of where we're going to finish. And I know all us football fans are ever the optimists, but there was a real sense of injustice, perhaps, in the fan base, and belief that, Christ, we were flying at the end of last season. We'll just carry on. We'll just carry on. How hard can it be? We'll just carry on and walk the league. Obviously, it doesn't work like that. And so maybe in a weird way, playing behind closed doors, if we can get ourselves into a nice position before the fans come back, it's a bit like Sunderland, right? You could probably argue Sunderland are benefiting a little bit from playing from behind closed doors. The fans aren't on their back, very demanding and stuff. And to an extent, our fan base is you comparing apples and oranges compared to Sunderland in terms of the size of it. But in a way, a smaller crowd who are just as vocal, you can get on the players' backs a little bit. And so perhaps playing behind closed doors for a little bit, at least at home, in hindsight, might not actually prove to be, a terrible thing. Now, it is for like finances and stuff like that. So, and for all of that, but trying to look at it positively, if we can, perhaps for some of the clubs in the league, and maybe for Posh, it's perhaps not a bad thing. I'm not saying anyone's been talking about that at all, because everyone wants to be talking about getting fans back, etc., and that's what we all want. But potentially, it's perhaps no bad thing for us, just while we sort of get established in the season. I don't know. I mean, it's a theory. I don't know, but it's an interesting one nonetheless.
Look, obviously, we're speaking about the manager. Then, obviously, rejoin the club joined the club for the third time in January 2019. He has a 50% win ratio, having played 78 games, winning 39 of those, drawing 16 and only losing 23. Obviously, he said he's probably grown up. He's had time at Preston, Doncaster, as well as his previous spells at Posh. Overall, 639 matches, won over 250 of them, drawing 141, losing 230, 42% win ratio. It's Tom, come to you first. It's not a bad managerial stat, that is it really? That wherever he's gone, he's got results. But it's just a matter of maybe bumping up his CV in terms of promotion to the Championship and maybe higher.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when you get Darren Ferguson, you get someone who's what you class as now a very experienced manager. And I think Neil was right. I think he needed to grow up and probably be a bit more reassured, a bit like Critchley is to some extent. Obviously, Critchley hasn't got the experience, but is a very measured person when he gives interviews, and he's very calm. Whereas I think Darren Ferguson, correct me if I'm wrong, Neil, had a lot of passion sieving through in some respects, which is always good to see. But as a manager, you've got to be level-headed. So who knows if that cost him in games, etc. You never know. But like Neil said earlier, if they don't get promoted with the team he has and his sort of experience now, I think it'll be a massive failing on Peterborough's part, and that's a compliment to them, not sort of anything negative if they do fail. But yeah, I mean, there's someone we'd scream to have at the start of the season, isn't it? So someone will bring a lot of experience and organisation and in some free attack and football. But Peterborough's got him again for the third time, and hopefully it's third time lucky for them after tomorrow.
We shall see. Just continue with the managers before we move on to previous games between the two clubs. Darren Ferguson has gone on to say in his pre-match press conference, Blackpool have made quite a few signings during the close season, and they have plenty of attacking options. They have good pace in wide areas and at times play with 4 attacking players. They've won their last, he says, 3 games, but it's 4 games. And sometimes it takes a little while to build momentum for a new team. For us, we want to bounce back from last week's defeat. We've had a good week of training and we look forward to the home games to come. Neil, to you on this one, and I'll come to Tom on the Neil Critchley quote. What are your thoughts of that? Obviously, knows Blackpool are going to be a threat tomorrow, but he talks about training, bouncing back. You expect him to go from the off, don't you, in terms of what he's just said there?
You would hope, from a Posh point of view at least, to have some sort of positive reaction to that Crewe game. We've had a week off, which is good, yeah. Especially in this sort of time, of games coming thick and fast. Jack Taylor's back tomorrow, which is good. He was away on international duty but didn't play. So other than the travel, which is probably a bit energy sapping, but he's back. He's passed his COVID test, so he's fit to play. So that's good. Yeah, I think as we've already touched on, I think if you guys come out flying and you do press and you do play with that attacking intent wide and through the middle, there's absolutely nothing really for you guys to be afraid of as such tomorrow. You've all got your own positives to look after, and I think you should definitely hang on to them and embrace them, because you can definitely have a go and get at this Posh team tomorrow for sure. But I am hoping and optimistic for a reaction from us after what was ultimately a pretty, let's call it, woeful effort away at Crewe, it has to be said.
Tom, I'll come to you, but I'm going to read a comment that's coming off Facebook from Chris. It might be too big for the screen, so Neil, you might disappear for a second. Yeah, he does. Chris says, imagine the atmosphere in the North Stand after the start that we've had would be one of the best atmospheres in the league, but we don't let half the players know when things aren't going well. So maybe behind closed doors hasn't been such a bad thing for either of us. Obviously, we were talking about home advantage and stuff there. And Tom, before we come to Neil Critchley's quotes there, what do you think? Obviously, we want to be back there supporting the team, and we know what home advantage can do for us from playoff wins and in the Premier League, and how good the atmosphere is. It's unbelievable at times. But again, at the same time, that when things aren't going well, it's probably a good thing for the players that fans aren't in the ground.
Yeah, Chris raises a really good point. I'll flip that point on its head a little bit. I think if we were back at home, would the players play better, or would they score more, make less mistakes? Yeah. You never know. But it is a really good point. If the fans were back and we were playing poorly, I think we're not afraid to say sort of wear our shirt with pride, because that's what Blackpool are all about. We just want to see endeavour and heart and sort of a passion for the team and want to win. So I personally, for the home games, especially games like Charlton, can you imagine Husband getting sent off and then the reaction we'd have? And I just think it would have been a different sort of game in entirety. So but I, for one, can't wait to get back, and I know we all can't. We're itching. So it's a good thing. I think we needed to calm down a little bit. I think, including myself, I think upon reflection, I'm not going to sit here and say pot kettle black or anything, because I think where we were going without Calderwood, I think we'd still be down there. I think he's added something, regardless of if it is Critchley just clicking, it's a coincidence. So I'm going to go with Calderwood's added some experience for Neil, and it's helped the team massively. So, I think, I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with the point, really. Just, I think it's really good to continue with where we need to be in terms of fans' expectations, because where we were going, where every game we were like, this is awful, including myself saying Critchley's got to go soon. So I think, like you said, it's only taken 4 games and it's clicked again. Tomorrow, let's say we win, we win the next game, and all of a sudden we're talking about a team that should be in the playoffs, and that'll be our expectations. And that's how fans work, isn't it? After a few negative results, we don't want the manager in, and after sort of a few good results, then we think they're the best thing since sliced bread. So we'll have to see how tomorrow goes and then Christmas goes. I think if we have a poor run of games over Christmas and it all goes badly, then we start asking questions again. But if we're reassured and we get a good few results, then I think the fans will be much more levelled in their way of thinking.
I'm going to pass on my positivity to you, Tom. Again, I know what you mean. There's so many fans that were calling for the manager's head,
including me.
Sometimes with the amount of changes that happen, you've got to give them time. And reading from the latest minutes from the club and the fans, it looks like they're sticking with Neil Critchley and for the long term, which is, for me, is great from the club to point that out. Talking to Neil Critchley, his pre-match press conference this week, he said momentum is an important thing in football, and we want to continue that on Saturday. You can easily win 2 or 3 games in a week, and you can jump quite a few places. Between now and Christmas could give us a clear indication of where we could be in the second half of the season. So that was Neil Critchley's quotes there. And we've already talked about momentum, so I won't kind of go into that too much. But moving on to another topic, we've met before. Both Blackpool and Peterborough have met on 44 different occasions in league and cup competitions. Posh have won 19 encounters, with Blackpool winning 14, and the two sharing the spoils on 11 different occasions. Blackpool won the last meeting 4-3 on the foul coast. Mo Isa scored early on before Niall Mason's own goal that levelled the scoring at Bloomfield Road. And then Armand Nongelais scored before the break with Ivan Toney making it 2-2 on 45 minutes. An intriguing game. I'm trying to make it exciting even months down the line. Armand Nongelais scored his second 3 minutes later to make it 3-2 to Blackpool. And Marcus Maddison, as people have left their comments in the chat saying very arrogant is Maddison, but that makes him the player he is, in my opinion. He made it 3-3 with 20 minutes to go, but another own goal sealed the win for Blackpool in November last year. I don't know if you were at the game, Neil, were you, or watched it?
I'm trying to think back. No, I don't think. Or did I? Yeah, I can remember all the goals. No, I don't think I did travel. I think I've been to Bloomfield Road probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 times in my past, but I don't think I made it to. I don't think I was at that one last year. But yeah, typical Posh game, right?
Plenty of goals
aplenty.
Goals, and own goals, yeah. Hopefully the same tomorrow, mine as well. The Blackpool win. Tom, did you get to the game or just watched it on the highlights?
Yeah, I saw the highlights. I was at work that weekend, but I do remember it, just seeing they scored to make it 3-3 and then a bit frustrated because it was such a topsy-turvy game, but to get the winner was brilliant. And I think the North enjoyed the 4th goal, especially after Marcus Maddison. I remember the celebration, just folded his arms in front of the Blackpool fans. So yeah, it was nice to get a win over a specific player more than the team, I suppose. So yeah.
We've even got it in the chat going. Obviously, Gary's comment there, didn't they celebrate in front of the Pool fans when they scored? Gareth says, I think it was Maddison, a word on there. So again, I was waiting for that moment just to bring this in. But looking at games where the scoreline's been one-sided, should we say, and we spoke about that potentially happening tomorrow if things click. Peterborough beat Blackpool 5-1 in 2016. Maddison, Taylor and Cull first got the goals then. Neil, were you at that game when Peterborough won 5-1?
Yeah, that was towards the end of the season, I think. Maybe even the end of the season.
Maybe it was one of the last games when we got relegated, or
yeah, because you guys were 1-0 up, I think, maybe at half time, and
we went 1-0 up,
yeah, and then Taylor scored a hat trick in about 10 minutes or something daft, something ridiculous. One of them was oh no, I think, did Maddison score? Did you say Maddison scored?
Madison, Taylor, and
Maddison got a penalty, I think, for one that was just probably outside but was given inside. It was end of season. From a Posh point of view, it was pretty sort of, nothing to play for type thing. So it was quite nice to sign off the season, but it didn't necessarily mean too much. I didn't realise you guys had been relegated by that point. But yeah, that was a nice day in the sun for Posh, I suppose. Plenty of goals again.
I want to come back to a great day in the sun a few years back now. A lot of fans, I really hope you know what I'm talking about here. Back in April 2010, a famous 1-0 victory for Poole put them inside the playoff places with, I think it was just one game to go, Bristol City at home. It was a fantastic, apology if you hear the dog in the background, a famous 1-0 victory for Blackpool, DJ Campbell scoring in the 11th minute. It's a shame it wasn't in front of the Blackpool fans that afternoon, but the atmosphere and the occasion and Blackpool taking over, I think, Swansea in the last playoff place. It was just an absolutely fantastic day. And as I said before we came on air, that most Blackpool fans, everyone who went to that game, was in the ground at least 45 minutes to an hour after the final whistle blown, just singing Holloway chant or just generic Blackpool chants, because it was that moment, Tom, wasn't it, where I think we all kind of believed that if we're going to do it, this is our year.
Yeah, I think the goal was so early as well, wasn't it? I remember just sort of, you thought it was going to be one of those another games where there's a few goals involved, especially with Blackpool that season as well. But I remember DJ Campbell getting that diving header across the line, and Blackpool away support, as much as the home support is superb, is probably one of the main reasons I supported the club from when I was young, and being there for, like you say, an hour in the ground, and it felt like 5 minutes or so, didn't it? So it didn't feel like we were there for an hour at all, and it was that realization of we could actually, like you say, we can actually do this, and this team is good enough. And it's just one of those magic moments that you won't forget in football. And you can take the Cardiff game, etc., etc. But I think for me, it's the Nottingham Forest, the Peterboroughs, the Swansea 6-3s, when you just have those memorable away days where you will never forget them. And that was certainly one of them. So a really good memory for us Pool fans.
I think it was just the fact that we were behind the goal. Obviously, the stand's been redeveloped now, but it was like terracing, and not many grounds would have had that probably back in 2010. I know there's a few still now, but just the whole, there was, I know you shouldn't have them, flares going off, and we had the drummer just God knows what his hands looked like after he went home. I'm sure he wasn't driving. Steve just got a comment saying, good shout about the game, but just the whole day. And I think that for me is one game that stands out. Maybe not the prettiest of wins, but in terms of what it meant to us as Blackpool fans, of realising that we could get to the Premier League. And again, we still had one game against Bristol City to play, which that was a nervous game. But again, Pool fans, if you've leave any memories from that day in 2010, leave them in the comments section. We'll try and read a few of those out. Another one that stands to mind before we move on is Blackpool's 4-1 win on the road at London Road in 2012. Wes Thomas, Nua Dicko and a Tom Ince brace ensured the 3 points for the Seasiders. I was going to ask both of you, any games that you've been to between the two sides that stand out? Neil, I'll come to you first if you've got any.
Yeah, both of that. I was just looking back when you were talking about those games. The game when you won 1-0, the first game you just spoke about then, that was the year when we got relegated from the Championship, that was. And I was just looking, I went to that game. You beat us 2-0 at your place earlier on in the season. And that was one of my visits to Bloomfield Road that day. So I was at both of those games. And then, that 4-1, I'm looking at the Posh scorer that day was Dwight Gale.
So
he's another one of them that we sort of forgot. He's a funny one actually, because we signed him in January from Dagenham, so he jumped from the conference or the whatever it was called then straight to the Championship. He played from us from January to May, and then we sold him to Palace for like 6 million in the summer. So we literally had him for like, I don't know, what would that be, like 15 games maybe, something like that, 20 games. He scored hat tricks. He scored a hat trick away at Blackburn. And then we sold him to Palace in the summer. So he's another one that we forgot. Yeah, I think we were saying just before we come on air, my memories of Blackpool are always just probably from the mid to late 90s, just always getting beat really heavily by Blackpool. We were talking about what was it, James Quinn and Tony Ellis up front, Andy Priest as well. He'd have been one up top as well. Mickey Mellon and whatnot. They're the names who I can remember. Just remember going to Blackpool and standing on that big open terrace before it was like when you had either the half by the corner flag or just round the corner, standing there on cold Februaries and stuff and just watching us get beat 3-0 and stuff. So that's all my memories are really of Posh versus Blackpool, of sort of when I was a bit younger going everywhere and just watching us get beat 3-0.
Tom, any memories for you? Obviously, we've probably spoke about one of the main ones, but anything else?
No, it summed it up. I think the 1-0 was one of my top 4 memories of all time, and the other game I went to was the 4-1. I think Ince scored I think it was just outside the box or just inside the box. He bent it in the corner, but we had Thomas as well. Wes Thomas is a great impact sub for us. So, the 1-0 for me is an all-time great. So it's not too far to travel from me in terms of that. So I've been there a few times. So, but the 1-0, I think for most Pool fans is probably one of the best, or if not in their top sort of 5 away games they've been to. So, for me, that's the one that stands out.
Just to come back to a comment, someone said the away trip to Peterborough in 2010 was in their top 3.
Yeah.
That was Lee Good. He said, Posh 2010, what a day, in my top 3 away games of all time. And again, I can probably echo that along with Forest in the top 2 or top 3. Not sure what another one game would be. I'll have to...
Maybe Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool. Yeah, there's so many out there, but I think Liverpool away. But if we're looking at away days, Liverpool, Forest in the playoffs, and Peterborough, final away game of the season. Dennis has got a comment in here saying went to Peterborough on a Tuesday night in the mid-late 90s, third round of the League Cup. I think a defeat, long way to go for a defeat that on a Tuesday night, Dennis. But I hope you enjoyed the game. That's the main thing. We'll move on if fans get them in. Obviously, there's a bit of a delay on the actual stream itself, so leave your comments in there. Someone said Swansea away, was it 5-3? Was it 5-3? Swansea away in the same league, 2007. I'm trying to remember what the scores now.
6, I think.
6-3, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
I got 4,
I've gone blank. Yeah. I must admit I was ill that day, or the day before, so I never travelled to it, which was that's why it's not my top 3. Players who have played for both clubs. We always do this section. One player who was in goals for Peterborough that day in 2010, I believe, was a young Joe Lewis. 167 games for the Posh between 2008 and 2012, and then 34 appearances whilst on loan in 2014. 15 for Blackpool. Neil, you obviously a good goalkeeper who was quite young when he was at Posh, but again, he's gone on to have a good career in football, hasn't he?
Yeah, I used to love Joe Lewis. I was a huge fan of Joe Lewis. I remember falling out with people on the London Road Terrace talking about Joe Lewis because he came in, we signed him for a load of money. He was on loan at Morecambe, I think, from Norwich. And then we signed him from Norwich for about 400,000 when we were in League Two. And he replaced Mark Tyler, who was like a club favourite, like one of our highest ever appearance holders. And a lot of fans sort of presumed or thought that, well, there's nothing wrong with Tyler, he doesn't need replacing. So Joe Lewis came in as this young buck replacing an old favourite, which a lot of people thought didn't need replacing. He was sort of up against it from day one, really. And he was about 6'7", weren't he? And he got lobbed in his first game as well from about a yard off his line, and that just didn't endear him to any supporters. But I loved him. I thought he was a brilliant goalkeeper. And I'm chuffed for him that he went to Aberdeen. There's actually a really good interview with him during lockdown. The Posh official press officer did a series of interviews with old Posh players, and he did one with Joe Lewis. And Joe Lewis really opens up about how nervous he was when he joined Posh and made a couple of mistakes early, and how it really affected his career. You know, and everyone talks about mental health, the importance of mental health these days, and you sort of forget about these young players who, they're under a lot of pressure. And, it's quite easy for us as fans on the terraces to be hurling abuse at them, but they're just normal people like the rest of us. And it just showed that it really affected him. I was a huge fan of him. I'm delighted that he's gone up to Aberdeen now and he's having a right time of things. I think he was player of the season or something like that a couple of years ago. But yeah, can't speak highly enough for Joe Lewis. Yeah.
Tom, is it Joe Lewis who was the goalkeeper who was wearing, is it a signed shirt or something? There was not enough goalkeeper tops, and there was a picture. I don't know if it is Joe Lewis or not. So someone in the chat might be able to know, but he was, there's a picture of him, like an action shot, and he's wearing the shirt. The badge, the logo doesn't look right, the sponsor, and then he's got like a signed stuff just above his chest. I think it was Joe Lewis, to be fair, but
pretty sure it was, but I think that's the sign of the times, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was long gone at those times.
Agree with in the chat. Sort of, he was decent. He came at a difficult time for us, and one of those players which, when interviewed, one of the players that did want to do an interview, he came across as he could see sort of the premise of the club and potentially what the fans sort of wanted, and he kind of understood our situation. So he always came across really well in interviews, and with all due respect to him, we were a poor side, but he came, he came across as a decent sort of goalkeeper and a very good professional, and I think that's why he's played so many games for so many clubs. So
moving on to another player, one I actually didn't think played for Peterborough, but it was Kyle Vassell. Obviously started his career at Norwich in the youth side, and joined Peterborough 2013 to 16, playing 28 games, scoring 5 goals, and then joining Blackpool after a few loan spells out from Peterborough in 2016 for 2 years, scoring 22 in 63. Neil, I say maybe not for Peterborough, but quite a decent goal scorer at this level, and he's gone now to play in the Championship. One of those players that maybe is known for his work rate more than the goals he scores.
Yeah, he was an interesting one, because I guess he's a bit like the sort of players we're talking about in terms of Posh's scouting system, or buy low, sell high. He was a player who'd been knocking around the non-league for a number of years, and Posh gave him his break in the Football League, and we signed him from Bishop Stortford, maybe someone like that, Chelmsford, somewhere like that. We signed him, and he joined Posh, and he's one of those players which you didn't think, when you say he played 28 games, whatever, for Posh, I wouldn't have thought that he played that often, if you know what I mean. You'd have thought he maybe had a handful of appearances, but he's another one of those players, when I said early that we throw a lot of arrows and some of them they don't hit the bullseye, he's probably one of them. Yet he's gone on, and as you say, he scored a few goals for you boys, and now he's at Rotherham, isn't he? So there's obviously a player there, and Posh noticed that. We just couldn't quite get it out of him, I guess.
Yeah, interesting. What, Tom, a quick thought of you and Kyle Vassell again helped Blackpool win promotion from League Two. Again, just wanted to move on, didn't he, and trying to push himself further up the league table and league standings, I guess.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Vassell. He was really strong, really passionate player as well. So again, one of those players that you wish to see in current times rather than the previous times. So I've got a lot of time for him. and decent footballer, and like you say, worked really hard for the team. So.
We'll see. Another player, going back a little bit of time, Christian's got this one in. Bobby Doyle, or Robert Doyle, born 27th of December 1953, passed away in the February 2019, a Scottish professional footballer, a central midfielder, one for the older generation, this. So, again, began his career at Barnsley before moving to Peterborough in 1976. He moved to Blackpool 3 years later, making the 49 league appearances and scoring 2 goals. That's just another one in there. We've got David Norris, who played 8 games for Posh in 2015 and then joined Blackpool in the same year for 12 months, playing 38 games, scoring just the 1 goal. Jack Payne, who I think we've brought him up quite a few times on the Friday night preview show. 74 games for Posh, 5 goals between 2013-16. And then just the 1 in 35 appearances for Blackpool. One for the oldies, Tom. I'll let you introduce this one. Another one for the oldies, should I say?
Not so old now, considering we've had ones from the 50s, but Lee Philpott was one. He had a good career at Blackpool. Not so many games for the Posh. He started his career there, but a good few games for the Bull.
Neil, anything with you that have been a little bit too early for?
Yeah, he would have been. He would have been at Posh probably, or he would have left Posh probably around the same year that I started watching Posh, and he went to join Cambridge, who are our local rivals. So, and that would have been in that John Beck side where Dion Dublin played as well, I think. And then he went on and got his move to Leicester, which of 2 clubs where I think he was only missing Cobblers for completing the hat trick of the worst clubs you can go to after leaving Posh. So he only had 7 games, and he didn't exactly endear himself to Posh fans. So, but he had a decent career. He played for some good teams, and he had a decent enough career post Posh.
Most players go away, don't they, have a good time? But Ray Gregson's got one here. He says Darren Bradshaw. Again, I've not done my research on some of these players, so it'll have to believe you, Ray.
I remember Darren Bradshaw at Posh.
What was he like as a player?
I think he played like centre back, centre midfield, something like that, around like the very early 90s when we'd got promoted into what was then League One before it was made the Championship. He was good. I think he was fairly popular with Posh fans. I think we quite liked him. Yeah, and then I can remember his Blackpool connection as well. I can't remember much off the top of my head, but I do remember watching him play for Posh quite a bit. Yeah.
Just go through his stats now. How good is Wikipedia, eh? There are other sites to find your research on. 73 appearances for Posh, 92-94, scoring the 1 goal, and then scoring the 1 goal at Blackpool, 94-97, making 68 appearances. So there's plenty of names in there, and we're going to move on to our final topic before going. Again, that hour and 15 is going to kill me. Score predictions. Steve thinks it's going to be a 1-1 draw tomorrow. Gareth has got a comment saying 3-1 to Poole, Medine, Yates, and Big Marvin Ekpiteta getting on the score sheet from a set piece, or you never know, a long range shot from the centre half. Tom, come to you first on your score predictions for Peterborough versus Blackpool.
Yeah, I'm going to go 2-2. My heart says 2-1, my head says 2-2, so I'll go 2-2. Always go with my heart, and I'm always wrong. So, 2-2.
Neil, what about you? Obviously, we know goals have come between the 2 sides in recent occasions. I can't see it being stalemate, as we've discussed before. So your score prediction for the game?
Well, I can see it being a stalemate, and Tom sort of stolen my thunder. I had 2-2 down. So again, I'm thinking you guys will definitely score. I can't see us keeping a clean sheet. The way we're playing at the minute, we've changed from 3 at the back to lightly playing 4 at the back. We've looked a little bit more wobbly. You're definitely going to score, probably more than 1. And you would be optimistic that Posh might be able to score. So I think 2-2 is a perfectly fair shout, to be honest.
Interesting. Christian, who's been in the comment section all night this evening, so thank you. He says 2-1 to Blackpool. David Jackson, he's also got his score predictions in. He says 1-1. We've improved, but it's going to be a very tough game. And the tough is a word we've used throughout this evening. Really interesting and a marker for the rest of the season. Adam Clark's got his thoughts in, and he says a 1-0 victory for Blackpool, but it's not going to be convincing. And as usual, there's always one culprit for Blackpool fans. Well, it might be a Blackpool fan, I could be wrong, who says 2-1 to the Posh. So again, score prediction, what am I going to go for? Not even thought about this myself. I'm going to go for I think it's going to be a draw tomorrow. I think it'll be nerves and one team wanting to keep form going in terms of Blackpool, making it 5 out of 5, and the Posh coming off a defeat last weekend. So I think both teams are going to go at it, but it's going to be a 1-1 draw for me. So we'll leave it. We'll leave it there. But again, if there's any more score predictions come in the next few seconds, we'll make sure we read them out. I'm just going to remove Tom quickly. I think you need to get off, don't you?
Just 2 secs, mate. Yeah, we won't be long.
Always, we'll bring you back in when he's ready. I want to finish the show, but Neil, it's been great to have you on. I hope you've enjoyed it and we've not been too harsh on you this evening.
No, not at all. It's been good fun. I spend the evening on Wikipedia reading about Darren Bradshaw now, but yeah, it's been good fun. I've enjoyed it. It's always good to get different fans' perspective of Posh. It's really interesting you're saying about, if you finish above Posh, then I think, you'll win the league or you get promoted. It's just fascinating to listen to other, and I suppose you find it interesting as well, how non-Blackpool fans, talk about Blackpool as well. So no, it's really interesting. It's as much a learning experience for me as well to listen to those views as well. But no, really good fun. So thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed it.
No, it's interesting. Obviously, people know my past working at Fleetwood, and as I discussed before, so League One in the last 3 years I know quite a bit. So having been to Posh a few times and lost in narrow defeats, it's hopefully Blackpool can go round. But we've just got one more comment in. I'll bring Tom back in before he goes. But Lee's got his prediction in the final one of the evening. He says 1-0 to Blackpool. I hope everything's okay, Tom. Anyway, a short burst there, but I'm just going to finish off the show. So like I said, Neil, it's great to have you on. Tom, again, a pleasure as usual. I thought you were going to say something then.
No, sorry. Good check. Thank you.
It's been great. So again, you can watch the show back on catch up after we've finished this. So make sure you do that tomorrow. If you're in the car for a bit of a journey, not too far during lockdown, make sure you give it a listen, and the audio file will be out shortly as well. As I said, that's enough from us. Huge thanks to everyone getting the comments in. Loads here thanking Neil for his insight into Peterborough. So again, a huge thank you. But the Seaside podcast will be live again tomorrow from 6 p.m. for the review of the game. So if you want to join us live and have your say on the game, stay tuned on social media. And until then, see you next Friday. And also a final check from me, if you haven't already subscribe to the Seasiders podcast YouTube channel, make sure you do so now by clicking the subscribe button and ticking the bell so you'll be notified when videos are going live. So again, Seasiders podcast on social media. But that is us for this week. We hope Blackpool can get 3 points tomorrow, but more importantly,